Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to another Ghost Recon Breakpoint video. Thanks to all of you who've been watching the other videos. I really appreciate your feedback. This is a game that slipped under the radar of a lot of Tom Clancy's The Division players. Some of us played it. I only got about a few hours out of the game because The Division at that time was vibing with the community. There were many things going on. And so that's something where you just have to kind of pick the route you want to go. More and more recently, though, I've noticed that a lot of Division agents have come into playing Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Some of you have been playing it for a while on my, friends list and in our inner circle and communities on Discord. And, it's been really interesting. So something that I wanted to highlight in this video pretty briefly is I think we're seeing a trend that's being set with this particular game. Now, let me do a little backing up so I can explain kind of a broad picture of what I see. Me, I like to do these analyses with Ubisoft IPs and kind of see if I can guess what they're doing and where they're going. So if you look at the way this game did when it came out on release, there were reports that the sales were not really that strong. I don't necessarily know what the numbers look like, but it appeared that Ubisoft, in their own right, were not necessarily happy with the direction the game went in terms of how the community gave the feedback, basically meaning the community was not really excited about the way they set out this game. I'm just saying it in the nicer way, but the Ghost Recon community could not get around this game at first. It had this weird loot game and gear game and grind game that people were like, this is not what Ghost Recon should be in regard to a Tom Clancy game. So fine and dandy, they decided to go back and start progressively adding some mechanics and some aspects of the game from Wildlands even, and they've eventually gotten the game to the point where it may look a little bit more like Wildlands than it did. In fact, I've been reading some of your comments, and some of you have started to attest to that. So I logged in, and it just basically gave me the option to jump into the Motherland, content piece and forego everything that I hadn't even done in Erewhon from in Aurora, from the first set of the game in terms of the first portion. And I laughed and I was like, well, I'll go ahead and do it since I have, the game on multiple platforms, which I didn't even know I had the game on PC. I guess it was gathering dust there because I wasn't playing it. So I feel the need to be able to just kind of jump in on one platform and maybe start over again on another platform. No big deal. And so again, not only did this free trial go out, in terms of they're going to be doing it very soon. So from the time you're watching this video, it probably will be live. There's also the option to invite your friends to this free trial to play alongside you with no time limits. This is very interesting. Now, a lot of the trials that are done that I've seen with Ubisoft, they range from timed to basically open and free game, but it's not all the time they do this kind of, unlimited time trial thing. I think they do it in a very rare situation, and this situation seems like one that they're using to call out for getting more people involved in this particular ecosystem. Now, there might be some, I would say, motives to that, and I'll try my best to explain that in this video. But it's really cool and it's really interesting to see this because somebody also mentioned in the other video that we were discussing and said, say what you want, Ubisoft has a way with going back to resuscitate their games. And one thing many people may say is, this doesn't seem like it's enough, but before progressively they do these things and eventually get this game to where the community actually wants it. Before you know what's happening, the game becomes an established game again. They've done it many times. They did it with Rainbow Six Siege. They also did it with For Honor. For Honor came out in a very poor, in fact, that was the most glaring example of Ubisoft sticking with their game and bringing it back to, I'm talking top level gaming of what it is in its genre. There aren't a lot of games out there like For Honor. It's just basically a brawler, a realistic brawler in a sense. And now it has its own competitive side of things. And so I think they might be taking the steps to doing this with Ghost Recon Breakpoint for a few reasons. One, they saw how people reacted to the Ghost Recon Frontline announcement, and they basically said, we're suspending those plans indefinitely or whatever it is. I don't know if they used the word indefinitely, but the news articles made it sound like they were just going to put it in a shelf somewhere. Or number two, they're probably going to be working on another Ghost Recon IP that's going to embrace all of those things, and they want the audience to not leave this particular experience with a bad taste in their mouth so that you guys can go back and purchase the other game. Because they're going to say things in the marketing. They're making this other game anyways. I'm just hypothesizing here. They're going to say, oh, yeah, we have these mechanics. We have AI teammates, which is something that the community was like, where are our AI teammates? And then they put that back in the game and just restructured mechanics all over the place. Again, if we look on the other side of the Tom Clancy, spectrum, you see the Division where its community and audience had gone through this huge drought. All of a sudden, its developers, they start to talk. Now, in my opinion, I just feel like Massive, more than likely, did not have their ducks in a row, especially with different shifts within their development teams and community teams from one studio to the other. I think that kind of affected them in a negative way and set them back a little bit. And they didn't have necessarily what they needed to be able to put up content or even put up communications. And so everything was left in, Yannick's lap, and he handled it the best way he felt he could handle it. But in case of this team, it seems like they had their together. And so they're able to bring this stuff here. So there's a collaborative and something shifting within the Division paradigm. People have basically expressed their opinions about these so-called Division free-to-play games. The Tom Clancy X Defiant, the Tom Clancy's, Ghost Recon Frontline, these games have not necessarily resonated because they're using a name that is akin to a genre of video games within Ubisoft that is not geared towards that. So what Ubisoft needs to recognize is they need to go back and look at their financial books, and I think they're doing it. And looking at their financial books, and they're saying, these games have continued to net, this company a lot of money. So if we're going to go with these, free-to-play ideas or whatever, they have to do it in a really subtle way and not just throw it in the face of the community, which they saved themselves a huge chunk of heartache. In fact, they saved themselves a huge chunk of heartache by announcing Motherland and Frontlines in the same 24-hour window. That was a way to temper the wrath that the community would have brought their way. And I think they knew it. I think they knew going in there saying, if we do this, if the community does not respond very well, it's not going to be easy to bounce back. So they threw that Motherland in there. Then they threw the Frontline. Frontline was just a hot potato. So they passed it on into the land of no return. And now Motherland is what's going to resonate. So with this free trial, you're going to see how all this stuff is going to start. They're going to hammer on all this stuff. And this is almost the perfect time to, start to do this when shooters are, about to start getting more and more attention in November. You're going to get Battlefield. You're going to get, what's the name? Call of Duty. Now, yes, these games are they're going to sell very well, but still underneath the radar is a free, cheap Ghost Recon third-person game that you can buy and you can play, and you can get a free trial now before these other games come out at their $60 price point. They will be able, they'll probably crush in terms of Ghost Recon, but when people are looking at their wallets and looking, do I buy two or do I buy a $9 Ghost Recon game on PC if I've never bought it before? Many people will make that choice and say, let me see what this Ghost Recon game is about. Smart marketing ploy. Ubisoft does that a lot with most of their IPs. They'll throw an old IP DLC close to the release of a whole lot of other, IP releases or betas or DLC release or brand new game releases as well, because it kind of gets the news cycle going. Journalists are looking for things to write about, right? So they'll pump you with all this news. Forza Horizon 5. It comes out early access on the 5th, if you guys didn't know that. So all of this stuff is going to go into the news cycle. It's almost free organic marketing and writing. So these are my, I would say my conclusions so far, and they're my opinions, don't get me wrong, as to what I think Ubisoft is trying to play here. Now, again, think about another dynamic for a new Tom Clancy game that's coming out. Out-of-the-box Tom Clancy game that has a huge PvE aspect that was kind of derived from a PvP game that somewhat agitated its community to an extent. That's Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Extraction. If you notice, that game has not necessarily been talked about very much. And I think Ubisoft is trying to find a way to just steer their little Tom Clancy ship so that this thing does not go capsize and be a colossal issue. So everything right now is so delicate to appeal to the community of the gamers that it's geared towards. And this is how I kind of think about these things. So people are satisfied with this new take on Ghost Recon basically a take that was very successful in Wildlands being imported into Breakpoint. There's also that side of them saying, what's wrong in trying out Rainbow Six Extraction? Because already most of the Rainbow Six Siege community have already said, well, this looks like a game mode that we had in Rainbow Six Siege at one time, and we don't feel like paying $60 for it. I know, and I said this in my Rainbow Six assessment video when it was first revealed, that I don't think Rainbow Six Extraction is really targeted to a lot of the Rainbow Six Siege community. The Rainbow Six Siege community has already netted billions and billions in terms of revenue, and so I think Ubisoft is just going to try other avenues. They are going for the Extraction theme, which looks more like a PvE theme to attract PvE players. I think that's actually something that, is good, because many of us that play PvE games, we would not touch Siege for anything. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily something that that, you know, I personally want to delve into. Not a lot of first-person games are on my roster to play anyways, if that's even the case. And then if you go back and just kind of think and say, okay, so what all is going on here? You know, to me, I just feel like it's a misplacement of marketing in terms of how they revealed Frontline. If they really want to do it, I think they can do it at the back of something big, some huge announcement for that community. So for me, if they wanted to, you know, even though they simultaneously revealed Frontlines and also Motherland at the same time, I think Motherland should have come first, and they should have made it big, huge, like make so much noise, give it the trailer that and the exposure that Frontline got, and then everyone's like, wow, Ghost Recon is on the table. Wait it out a few months, and while the Frontline you know, thing may be something that they may be eager to do, they make sure that the Ghost Recon Breakpoint community is already satisfied, having dealt with it, and then they start to tease this new battle royale little by little and just collect player feedback. I think they dumped it way too cold, and they just basically saw the vitriol and have now passed that potato into, you know, the land of endless development or whatever it is. But I think it still rears head. They want to do it, and Ubisoft sometimes finds themselves in a position where they don't necessarily want to make a game that is geared to an audience without leaving the audiences that it's not geared towards. That's just the truth. Games will have their specific demographics. Not everybody in the fighting game community plays Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or Tekken, and if those games worried about appealing to the broader audiences, they will lose what makes them unique and special. And so this is a lesson that they can learn from games that have been successful, where they only have to release just one game for about 5 to 6 years, and that game racks up all this money and popularity before they even talk about a sequel. But because many of these other games, especially the shooting genre, do not dig in and go for the 2-year cycle, the 2.5-year cycle, they've continued to make shallow versions of themselves over and over again. This is why people are, in a sense, mad at some of the Call of Duty and Battlefield aspects, because they just don't feel like these games are getting too much depth. Now, I don't know about everybody in those communities, but I've heard different opinions of people who have said that these, games are not necessarily, getting better. They're just more and more getting worse. But that's because they're pumping them out at immense, rates. Whereas if you look at, say, fighting games, a game like Tekken 7 has just been sitting there, releasing new fighters, continuing to create a huge audience in this community. Street Fighter 5, they're not even talking about Street Fighter 6. Even though they had teased it in some sense, no one even talks about it, because the Street Fighter 5 game is still continuing to gain traction and keep its, its position as one of the better fighting games out there, being shown in, tournaments where hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions are spent to host in many cases. So why would the shooting game genre not dig in? And I'm looking at Ubisoft or Breakpoint saying, as you're starting to dig in, keep digging in, because you will eventually unearth exactly what the gem is that this Ghost Recon game can represent, and your community will rally around it, and more people in the much more hardcore, third-person shooter, maybe Spec Ops type games who enjoy these games can come in and say, okay, there's something specific and unique here, and they might want to join. That's the audience you should be attracting with a game like this. If you want to make a game like Ghost Recon Frontline, name it something different. Call it Battle Arc or something crazy, and say Ubisoft is bringing out their own original Battle Royale game, and not throw a Tom Clancy name on it, because you lose people when you do that. I'll stop my ranting now. Talk to you guys in another video. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out.